and he has worked with, over the last 35 years, everyone from professional athletes to CEOs and military personnel. He is probably the only person on this planet that has coached 17 number one athletes in the world who play 6 different sports. And he's helped these athletes have sustainable careers and post careers where they are actually very responsible professionals after their careers, and they're doing great things in the communities. He's worked with athletes ranging from Justin Rose to Marco O'Meara to Ranchi Sanchez to Jim Courier, Monica Seles, Eric Lindros, Mark Richter, Olympic gold medal speed skater Dan Jansen, and the list goes on. He's currently coaching various athletes who are top in their field in different sports. And for the most part, he really can't tell you who those people are, because these people want to have leg ups when it comes to actually being the best athletes in the world. But I know for one of them's the number one tennis player in the world who has truly learned from Dr. Loehr over the years and has really benefited. And he may go down as one of the greatest tennis players of all time if he keeps winning these titles. Dr. Loehr has also started a place called the Human Performance Institute, which is down in Orlando. And it really serves all different types of people when it comes to athletes as well as executives. And it's a 2.5 day program that people can go and experience called the Corporate Athlete. And it's a really incredible program because you're really basically learning about how to be the best that you can be as a parent, as an executive, and really focusing on your health as well. And he has had an incredible following and has his master's and doctorate in psychology and is a full member of the American Psychological Association. The Human Performance Institute has hosted over 250,000 executives over the course of the last 20 years. And Dr. Loehr eventually, I don't call it retired, but he stepped down from the Human Performance Institute about 2 years ago. I was very fortunate to be able to go to his retirement party. It was a special day. That people flew in from all over the world, and they actually named a building after him with all the work that he's done for mankind. I met Dr. Loehr when I was 13 years old at the Orange Bowl Tennis Championships in Coral Gables, Florida, many, many years ago. I was a tennis player, had an opportunity to have an international ranking, and my grandmother came down to watch me and my father to watch me play. And rarely did they ever come to my tournaments, but this was an important one for me. And they came down, and my grandmother was the one who said, "There's a special guest speaker speaking. You should go check him out." And sure enough, I went to the conference room and pulled out my notebook, and Dr. Loehr was talking about the power of focus and going out and playing a sport that you really love. But you most importantly, you have to have fun. And as a 13-year-old, I cherished everything that he said. And some of those tips that he gave me, as well as about 100 other people in that room, really benefited me. I was able to do really well in that tournament, and I always remembered his name after that. Now, Dr. Loehr didn't remember me at all, but for the 100 people in that room that were playing in this tournament, we all remembered him. And over the years, I followed him in Tennis Magazine and Sports Illustrated, and every time I would watch the US Open, I would say, "That guy, I remember him. He was in the player's box." And it wasn't really until about 8 years ago when I heard about the Human Performance Institute and had a chance to go down there and with a few friends, and we got a chance to reconnect. And Dr. Loehr asked me what I was doing, and I said, told him all about ESF and all the camps that we run. And he said, "Well, give me a call sometime. I'd love to talk to you about how we can make a difference in children's lives." And so from that point on, he and I have spoken for the last, I'd say, 4 years, every week for about an hour to an hour and a half, 2 hours. We've become very close friends, and I'm honored to call him a mentor. So Dr. Loehr, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us tonight.
Well, thank you, Michael, for that remarkable introduction. You know, I I feel like I've been very fortunate to have a lot of different experiences, and all those experiences, I'm hoping I can make a contribution in the area that I think is most important, and that is with young people and their parents and the people who influence those young people. We had a living laboratory. I think today we had almost 400,000 people go through that. It was eventually purchased by Johnson & Johnson. But I have come to have great respect for you and for all that you represent and all the tough times you've been going through. I can't imagine. And with the contributions you've made at ESF, I think are to the lives of young people is astonishing. And I'm hoping we can create some real value for the folks who are tuning in. And I want to say thank you for tuning in. It's a big deal to carve out time on a Tuesday at 7 o'clock at night, and probably have not really heard much about anything about Jim Loehr, but I really do hope that you'll get some insights. I will be as candid as I can about what I've learned. I actually started in the mental health field. My master's and doctorate were not in performance psychology. There was no such thing. I became a licensed psychologist in the state of Colorado, and I became chief psychologist and executive director of a very large community mental health center that served the whole central and southern part of Colorado. It was a huge operation, 9 offices. We covered 8,600 square miles. And that was kind of what I was trained to do, to work in to help people who were broken to get healthy. And little did I know when I left that field and go into the application of psychology to human performance that it would take me right back into the mental health field, because we actually learned that health ignites performance. In all the years that we've worked with all these incredible high achievers, from sumo wrestlers in Japan to chess champions, all we were doing is getting them healthier as human beings, physically, emotionally, mentally, and actually spiritually. And it was a great living laboratory for distilling. I'm a data guy. I love research. I love data. And the conclusions we came to took years, literally years to come to. And every time I get a new, what I think significant insight, and felt very privileged to get it, I'd write another book about that insight. And hopefully tonight we can distill some of these. It's a very tough time for people. I have 3 sons and I have 7 grandchildren. And I've watched what's happened to them and their families. And I'm sure it's the very same thing that's happening to everyone who's tuning in. This is virtually everything that we hold value has come under siege. Our health, our well-being, our happiness, but more importantly, the people that we care most about, our children, our parents, our grandparents. And so this is a very, very stressful period in the lives of so many people. People have lost their homes, they've lost loved ones, and we have this invisible kind of almost a terrorist that is suddenly invading almost everything that we have come to know in our normal routine. We've all been under quarantine, we've been under house arrest, we've been under severe restrictions, and I think it's been hitting hardest, not just on adults, but on children. And I'm deeply concerned when you look at the statistics and how kids are trying to manage through this. It's very, very alarming. And maybe we can talk about things to mediate some of those very, very powerful forces that can literally just take kids apart. So thank you for tuning in, and thank you, Michael, for having me and for all the contributions you've made in the lives of so many, particularly young people and their parents. And I'm hoping we can do something important tonight.
Thank you, Doctor. We have a number of really great questions our parents have given us that we'd love to share with you. Let's first start personally with you. knowing you over the years, I've found that you have a pretty good balance. You were having people calling you from all over the world that you were working with. I know at a certain time of day that you would be disciplined on trying to get some exercise in to just clear your head as you're trying to kind of solve and put out fires that people were dealing with around the world. How are you managing through the pandemic yourself personally, and how has the pandemic impacted your you personally and professional life?
Well, it has had quite an impact. It's a really interesting question. I had a home in Naples, Florida, and a place here in Colorado. It's just where I am now. And I was so concerned about all my families in Denver. I was so concerned about all of them that I left Florida and moved back to Colorado, and didn't really realize that even though I'm here and all my family, all my cousins, all my grandchildren and children are all right here, I can't see them that often. And if I do, it's all remote. And all the programs that I've been doing all over the country, no, most of those have been in person. I've now, just like everyone, has had to change and become remote. So I've had to spend a lot of time on screens and on telephones. And I began to realize that all the things that we've been teaching about stress, I had to apply to myself. All the concerns I have for my own family, and then all the tragedies that I get to hear about from everyone else. I've carried a lot of angst, so to speak, about all these things and all the routines that we teach athletes about working out and about eating properly and hydrating properly and having time to reflect and what I call oscillation, to turn the system on and then to learn to turn it off, and how you turn it off, how to reignite your hope and reignite a sense of belief and a sense of kind of optimism that we can get through this and that we will one day be stronger. Things that I've been teaching people for decades, I now had to apply to myself and to all of my family. And everything has changed. I can tell you every part of my life has changed. And human beings have to adapt. And the adaptation that I think we've all had to been, we didn't have a choice here. We either adapted or we ended up a victim. And a lot of our kids are trying to figure out, how do you get through this at a time when socialization is their most important element for health, and they're blocked out. So for me, it has really taken me to what I've learned and what I've taught for so many years and applied it to my life and to the life of all my family.
So, do you have any suggestions, Doc, for helping children maintain mental health during this extended isolation? Any tips for helping to use this as an opportunity to build resilience in our children? You know, I have my kids. I have a 1.5 and a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 7-year-old who just turned 8. And, I'm trying to figure out ways to build that resiliency muscle. Obviously, any tips and suggestions for us all as parents?
Well, resiliency is probably one of the most essential capabilities we have, skill sets, muscles that has to be developed. And when individuals are going through hard times, really challenging times, that's when that muscle gets stretched. As long as you understand that you have to bounce back in some way. And if you think about your life, the things that have pushed you the most in life, as long as you got through them, have actually helped you the most. And it's extremely important for you and for all of your children and loved ones to build a framework around what's happening. So the worst thing that can happen is you just feel like this is coming down on top of you and you have no understanding of it. It's like you are a victim here. And the more you can talk about it and help them understand what you're going through, how do you reframe this, not to become the worst thing that's ever happened in your life, but so often these very stressful things that come to us build us a portfolio of strengths that will carry us through the next one. And believe me, your children will go through many of these kinds of episodes in the future. So we need to have perspective. They need to understand what's going on inside of you, and you need to listen to them. And they're speaking to you in multiple ways, and they need hope. They need to have a sense that this is going to be okay, and that this crazy period they're having to go through, virtual school, virtual contact with other people that they normally are in school with every day, that this is an opportunity for them to get to know themselves better, to actually learn lessons that could never have been taught in an accelerated way they are now, as long as you get through this and don't become too wounded by the experience. I've learned that the most precious part of this resiliency equation is the voice no one hears but the person himself or herself, and that's the private voice. And that's the voice you have to get through to as parents. You have to listen, not just to what they're saying on the outside, their public voice, but what is going on in the inside. And that takes a very special kind of listening, a special kind of patience. And I can tell you this, don't worry if you don't think they're listening to you, but what you're saying publicly. But be very concerned about what they're seeing in you as they watch you go through this. You are coaching them. You are either making it better for them or making it worse for them. Their brains are on all the time, and their brains are picking up, most importantly, messages from you. And that message goes through to their inner voice, their private voice, which runs the show. And if that voice is not a positive, clear voice, it can create real serious issues for these young people, because that's their inner coach. And sometimes those inner coaches are not healthy. And the internet can interfere with that coach, the bullying, all kinds of things. You can say, I'm fine, no problem with my public voice, but on the inside, there may be wars going on that are really difficult. And parents need to appreciate, need to understand, and need to help them understand ways to get clarity in the area that actually has the most influence over them. And that's their private voice is the voice that creates stories around what's happening. More important than what's happening to them is the way they are speaking to themselves around it. The most important story they will ever tell is the story they tell to themselves. And parents are often not aware if they ask them, how are you doing? And they say, fine, I don't want to talk about it. That's really probably not what's going on. And the statistics show very alarming trends in terms of how this whole pandemic and the separation from their peers and school, no connection to teachers, their sports. It's almost like they've been put in prison in a way. And parents need to understand it's not only happening to them, but it's happening to their children in a way that is almost, inexplicable, because it's so deep into, they don't understand, you don't understand what's happening, but they have fewer words to describe it. And the inner voice is the most sacred territory. And that's where you need to help them understand how important it is for them to have a sense of purpose, for them to be able to walk through this and to get through it with what I would call their best self, and to help them listen to this voice inside and see if we can find a way to make that voice constructive. A wonderful coach that will be with them through the rest of their life. But you are teaching every single day your children how to respond by the way you're responding. And here's something that's a little alarming, but I will tell you, you need to hear this. I didn't hear it. I didn't understand it with my children until kind of halfway through my raising of my children. But I never understood that the way I speak to my children will one day be the way that their private voice speaks to them, whether it's healthy or not healthy. So if your child is throwing a temper tantrum and you start screaming back at them, you know, you're a baby, you're nothing but a pain to all of us. Grow up and be somebody that has some self-control. And you may even throw words out at them that, you know, you're just, you know, okay, be a loser for the rest of your life. We're trying to help you, for God's sakes. The way you speak to them, whether it's right or wrong, will be part of that inner coach. And it starts showing up about the age of 5 or 6. And even though this was a baby who was screaming and yelling and disrupting your restaurant experience, and you're really upset about it, and you speak to them and you're very harsh, that voice is not the voice you want in their head. What you want to be able to say is, I'm going to speak to you now the way you would like to have their private voice speak to them. Calmness, firmness, with limitations, with a sense of perspective. Okay, if you throw the temper tantrum, you know what the rules are. You're going to have to go and X, Y, and Z. We're going to have to leave the restaurant. You know I love you, but you also know that this is not something that we can't interfere with the dining experience of other people. So I'm going to have to leave, and I won't be able to eat, and you won't be able to eat. And that's something that's disappointing to me, but we all have issues, and I want you to learn how to handle them. That calmness, that firmness, that sense of valuing what they're saying and understanding what the issues are, that takes enormous perspective on the part of parents and control. But when you realize that you're seeding the voice that will control them for the rest of their life, and that is an enormous responsibility. You are coaching their inner coach by the way you speak to them. And the more you get that right, the more you are likely going to leave them in a situation as evolving teenagers and as adults with the most precious gift they will ever have. The most important coach we ever will have in our life is the coach no one ever hears but us. It's the inner coach. And our parents, if you have parents who've really built that, my folks had a wonderful private voice to me, but my dad was harsh. He was a very perfectionistic guy. And I carried that with my children until I figured out what was really happening, and I changed on a dime. And my kids still talk about it. I still talk about it. But we didn't understand the power of your voice in terms of helping them to develop the real power broker in their life with wisdom, with perspective, with hope, and with a sense of belief that we're going to get through this. We're going to be better and stronger for this. You can tell them this, but unless it gets through to their inner voice, it's just talk. And there are lots of things that people have to do everyone wants to reach that inner voice. They want your inner voice because that means influence and control. The private voice is the real goal mine, and that's what's leading you in a positive or negative direction always.
So that private voice you and I have talked about is so critical in developing in youth. And as I mentioned, I've got a bunch of kids who are 8 and younger. And the question that many parents are probably thinking is, how do you develop that private voice? And I know one of the things I've done whenever we're driving somewhere, my kids in the car or around the dinner table, I'll just basically play a game with them, and I'll say, positive or negative? And I would say, oh, darn it, it's raining out. And right away they'd say, that's negative. And then I would give them the opposite. It's such a beautiful day out. Dad, that's positive. And so I would test them this way with just simple ways of trying to see if they could tell what's positive versus negative. And that's how I've been trying to kind of develop that private voice. Doc, you and I have talked about this before. I think this generation of youth has an opportunity to be the greatest generation that's ever been on this planet if we can develop these muscles of character, if we can help them through this pandemic, if we can help them really, if we can really look at this, yes, this is happening to our kids. Let's turn that to maybe this is happening for our kids, and let's really try to bring out the best in them. Any recommendations like that?
You've really said something that I think is really, really critical. And that is, again, getting your arms around what's happening and frame it in a way that we are not victims. And in fact, I think you might be 100% right if we can equip youth today with the belief that they can handle anything. This could well be the greatest generation, as opposed to the generation that lost out and never really had a chance to recapture their youth in the way we really wanted or intended for them to have it. And that comes from the perspective that you have in the way you're talking to your children. And you have to find creative ways and special moments where they're listening, and maybe in the context of a game, maybe subtly, but you find ways to kind of penetrate kind of this, they're in another world oftentimes, and you really have to find if they're threatened, if they're upset, if they're angry. It's often very hard to get through in a very positive way. But just say, at the end of the day, I'd like for everybody, before we have a meal tonight, I want you, even though it was a tough day, I want you to list at least 2 really positive things that happened to you today in this situation, or another one. So you're going to build that positivity muscle. Another one might be, I'd like to hear 2 things or 1 thing that you're really grateful for, even though this is a tough time. What would it be? And then another one great would be, and have each person go around, what could you possibly take away from this very difficult day today that might help you someday in the future? What might be a positive takeaway that might be the beginning of a new strength for you? What did you learn today that could really maybe help you be a better person tomorrow? And the most important assets that we have, and this, I was not trained as a psychologist to go here. This took me a lifetime in looking at the data. The single most important health that a human being has is the health that is connected to how we treat other people. And kindness, compassion, warmth, trust, being trusting and trustworthy, being loving and kind and caring, being humble. Those are the assets that really define a successful life and become the muscles that must be most importantly developed in the early years. And the parents are the ones, and the teachers and coaches, if they have the right perspective, find ways to build those muscles. It was always interesting for me. Why is it that the more we looked into this, the more we realized that the relationship we have with others is the single most important component that we found in this success, sustained success, I'll put it that way. You can be a flash in the pan and get to the top of the hill in achievement, but you take shortcuts and you have a compromised character, and it eventually catches up with you. But parents who realize that this is really the gold standard of a human being, and they make this the most important part of their connection to their children, something magical happens. And you begin by the way you treat them. You treat them in ways, justice and a sense of perspective, a sense of prudence, a sense of self-discipline. The more you understand there are assets we all we have to have, and you make this an important part of your parenting because that is what's going to define their travels through life. So I was curious, and when we look back in evolutionary times, you know, it makes a lot of sense that our ancestors survived for thousands of years by caring for one another, by paying attention, by showing warmth and understanding and compassion and reaching out and helping. And those that really were kind of one-offs, were independent and did their own thing and were sarcastic and cynical about others, were kind of cast out of the village, of the tribe. And they were the ones who didn't survive. You couldn't survive on your own. So thousands of years, it's deeply embedded in us, a sense of, for us to really feel good about ourselves, we have to really take care of others and care about others. And the more we do that, the better we feel about ourselves. And that's independent of extrinsic achievement. So we learned that even I've worked with, as you said, Michael, a lot of number ones in the world, and they often felt empty. And the reason they did is they kind of had to, in a sense, almost walk over dead bodies to get to the top. And then they look back and they realize that that really wasn't the most important part of the journey they were on. The most important part was who they became as a human being, and particularly how they connected to others along the way. And so if parents understand that the most important part is trying to get inside that person and understand that it really isn't about them, it's about what they can do for others, and to teach that lesson over and over again, because we tend as youth to see ourselves as the center of the universe. And the more we can get them to understand that it will never be about you. It's about being happy and being fulfilled. And that comes in caring for, understanding, being a great friend, being a good sports person, really caring about what happens to people in your family and outside your family, even your friends on Facebook or on Instagram or wherever you tend to be. And it's a challenge, particularly when we are in a very isolated world. But kids need to be close to other kids. They need to have their friends. They need to have a connection. That is part of their normal development. And we need to find ways to be creative to make that happen. Even online gaming, where they're on teams and they can see their own teammates and they challenge people from Japan, and they get to connect with their kids because they can't connect with them. They're not in school. And now they have a way of coming to terms with other kids their own age and having fun and competing with other kids and learning how to compete successfully. And they have an absolute record of how they did today versus last week. And then we have to figure out, how do we limit the amount of screen time they have so that they actually get out and they work out, they eat right, and maybe parents leverage all of this screen time, particularly gaming. They watch it very carefully, but they use this as a privilege that has to be earned by doing chores, by making their bed in the morning. They get a certain number of points, and they actually can buy with those points a certain amount of gaming time to be with their friends, and a certain amount of work they do, their homework and so forth. Parents have to be very creative in terms of how they fill the needs of their children and also get their own needs met, because we have to have time for reflection, and we have to have time to actually go into the storm and solve issues and be fully engaged. But we have to also allow kids to be disengaged and to find ways for them to find, fulfillment in a world that's turned upside down for them. And if we don't solve that riddle, we can leave them in serious trouble. I love what you said there, turning this on its head and saying, this could well be one of the greatest things that happened this could be what we call post-traumatic stress growth, that we actually grow, not become traumatized by it, but we've helped our kids grow so they can handle almost anything. They bounce back, they bounce forward because they've learned through this difficult time how to be more than just a survivor, but they've actually grown and become a better, stronger human being because of these difficult days.
Doc, what's your best advice on monitoring and limiting screen time during this pandemic? I mean, what's the right balance in an environment when, participation in school and activities encourage it? In some cases, it's a lifeline for children to be social. Is there any?
Well, I don't know that there's an exact formula. I know I watch my kids and my grandkids, and I will tell you, they have very little excitement about a lot of things just around doing their schoolwork and having to work on, then they like to go online and do their things with their friends. But I've noticed that one of the things that actually gets them really excited is competing in these online gaming. Fanatic, there's one of them, there are many others, and they're all doing it. And they're on a team and they're competitive. And they get a scorecard on how their team is doing and how they're doing. So I've kind of turned that around and said, listen, if you eat right, if you get your sleep, if you really want to be a great competitor online, you actually have to do a lot of things. And this is the same stuff we taught at the Institute. You have to work out, you have to get more energy, you have to be able to sustain focus and engagement, connect in a positive way with your team. And rather than using this as a negative in their life, we've really leveraged it to become a really positive thing to help them get healthier. And you're right, we have to limit the amount of time, but they can purchase that time by doing other things that are really healthy for them. So they eat really healthy meals, they have healthy snacks, they stick with their chores around the house. And they actually get a lot of, we need to help kids get more physically active in whatever way it is. If kids don't, that's how the body stays healthy and the mind. Physical activity for kids is indispensable. If they're sitting around and not moving for hours and hours on end, the whole system breaks down. The system works in oscillation. All the hormones of the body are working, the muscles pump. Critical elements of restoration and healing, and all the hormones, the neurotransmitters in the brain, neuropeptides, all of this needs to have energy, and there is a movement component that is essential to good health. So the challenge that parents have is we need to leverage the online stuff that they do. We have to find ways for them. If you can get them in a sport that actually is okay to do during the pandemic. So a lot of kids are now into tennis because they figured out a lot of kids are into golf. They're into other sports where they can actually get active and physical. Maybe it's Tai Chi, or maybe it's they get into some kind of sport competition that keeps them active. They need to have fun. They need to be engaged, and then they need to be disengaged. And they need to understand how to work with computers and how dangerous it is if that's all you do is be with computers. And you need to figure out how can you become more social in a positive way with a team and actually work together as a unit to become better competitors. So I like to try to help them understand how to leverage this technology, because that's the future. How do we interface with this technology in ways that don't take us apart, but actually help us to become better, stronger human beings, better prepared for the future that we're going to face for sure.
I love some of the things you just said regarding, eating right and getting sleep and trying to do some type of exercise, and if you can, the sport. It's almost like what pilots do. Pilots are literally, working to really navigate a plane, and they've got to be fully concentrated. Because if they're mentally exhausted, or if they're, if they've been doing it all day, or if they're eating poorly, they'll be a terrible pilot. And so if we could maybe almost train our kids to, if you're going to do this, online game or if you're going to be a part of this team, you need to be really focused. And then you need to stop and you need to take a break and let's do something else. You need to eat right. You need to get sleep. That's a really great couple tips. So thank you for that.
The changing channels is so important, and understanding how to work out or how to be physical, then how not to be physical. It's really turning, and even neurologically, it's extremely important. There are a lot of neuroscience now that shows how important it is that we oscillate between focusing outward and focusing inward for reflection. And one of the things that parents can do is to help kids understand, to be more reflective. They can actually spend time learning how to meditate, how to be more focused, how to be involved in activities that actually get them to think about what's happening to them, and then come out and actually be better prepared for what they're going to be doing when they're engaged in the outside world. This reflective process, the brain toggles between focused on the outside and focused inwardly, and that toggling back and forth is extremely important for neurological health. It's also important, I call it oscillation, between sitting still and being very active. And this is occurring physically, it's occurring emotionally. We need to figure out, how do we get recovery emotionally when we're upset or angry and frustrated? How do we get recovery spiritually when we feel like someone has cheated us or people have taken advantage of us, and it begins to question the very basic values of sportsmanship or anything else? And it is that back and forth. And parents actually show how that's done in their own life. They become teachers, not so much by talking about it, by actually showing kids exactly what they have learned, and then maybe saying, this is what I'm doing now. And this is all preparation for you having a great life as an adult. Everything they're going through is it's a test. It's an opportunity to grow. It's embracing stress the way it comes to you, learning from it, and becoming better. And every day, the goal is to become a little bit better, a little bit stronger, a little bit healthier, a little bit happier, and more prepared for the future.
So we've just had two really great questions come in from parents, and it's all around stress management. And if we switch over to sports for a second, you've worked with people like Jimmy Connors and Novak Djokovic, who've had some fiery tempers. They've had some temper tantrums throughout their career. The first question is, how can I demonstrate as a parent to my children stress management, coping techniques, schoolwork accountability, and responsibility during this time of great uncertainty? As well as, how can I be less reactive when I'm overexhausted and stressed from juggling schooling from home while working full time? I find that I know what to do, but in the moment, when I'm tired and being pulled in so many directions, I don't have the mental capacity to try new techniques or teachable moments.
That's a real world question. And that's when the tires hit the pavement. That's how, you're beat up. You're absolutely at the end of your rope. And now you have to deal with kids who are maybe disrespectful, throwing tantrums, want you to pay attention. They want your full engagement. And you're going, I can't give you my full engagement. I'm so exhausted. I don't know that I can get through this moment. And so your patience as at the end. And all I can say is, those are the moments that are the greatest opportunities for showing your children how to live their lives. They know when you're tired. They know when you're at the end of your rope. And if you reach out and give them your full engagement, your patience, show kindness, show limits, show structure, and you speak to them the way you would like for them one day to speak to their children and to themselves, that is perhaps the most powerful teaching moment you will have. That means you have to be aware of what's happening to you. You rise above it and you say, wait a minute, I'm going to teach my kids a lesson here that they may not know now what I'm doing, but I'm going to be proud of. I'm going to bring my best self, no matter what it takes, to them, because I care about them more than anything in my life. I would like to just be a grouch and be impatient and let them have it, but I don't want that to be the legacy that I leave with my children. And every time I do that, another mark is made neurologically that is probably never forgotten. And it becomes part of that voice that will be carried forward. So every crisis you have in your life and in theirs is an opportunity to go what you might say is an abnormal path. To be a great human being, to be a strong person is just not that normal. You have to work at this. You have to work at those muscles. And if life is all great, you'll never develop those muscles. But if you can show patience and kindness and compassion, and also tough-mindedness, and draw lines in the sand and still talk to them with perspective, they will get it, and it'll start penetrating the voice that will ultimately run the show in their life. So these are the times that really, really, push us outside our comfort zone. And those are the moments that are most important in terms of teaching our children and those we care about. First of all, how much we care about them. And secondly, you're going to rise above what you would like to say and be the person that will make you most proud, because that is what you consider to be the best you have to offer. It's the best version of yourself, whether you're tired, beat up, or not.
Doc, to be your best self, that means you got to take care of yourself as a parent. What are your key tips there?
Well, it's such an interesting thing. You get so exhausted and maybe you buy this message that my life is not my own. I'm here to take care of others. And you do a great job of that. And then all of a sudden you find that your wick is gone. You have no more bandwidth. Now you get sick, or you start becoming very negative, pessimistic, cynical. Your whole attitude in life starts to tumble. Maybe the business you're in is starting to come apart, and you're wondering, how in the heck can I lead my family, lead myself, when everything is falling apart? And so you have to go back, and I love this notion. We use it at the Institute with perhaps one of the most brilliant tools for people to access when they are in troubled times. And it's almost as if we have this little person on your shoulder. Occasionally we access our best self, the best version, when we're most proud, particularly under stress. We go there at times, which says you can be that person. And that is the person that will, if you consult that person and you mirror that person, you'll never get in trouble. That's the person you want to consult. That's that private voice that holds the highest standard for you. That's the mother or father you want to be. That's the son or daughter you want to be. And you rise above the immediacy of some kind of instinctual response. You just want to lash out. You want others to take care of you. But you kind of look at this and say, wait a minute, I'm not in a good place. I'm going to go work out. I'm going to eat better. I'm going to do what I'm telling my kids to do. I'm going to figure out a time, 10 minutes a day, to have time for myself to kind of reflect, get back in touch with who I really want to be. And I'm going to not accept any excuse for me stepping outside that what I would call ideal kind of version of me. And so you teach again in stressful times, you work out, you take time for yourself. You at dinner table, you absolutely find a way to give thanks for all the blessings that you've been given, in spite of all the horrific things that are happening around you. And your positivity, your optimism, your confidence, and what you're teaching is not just yourself. You're teaching everyone around you that maybe this is the greatest contribution you can make to the lives of those you care about, is your example. Not what you say, but actually what you do and how you treat others in those critical moments.
It was interesting when I was down at the Human Performance Institute with you. When people say working out, let's get into a car, go into a gym, it's an hour or whatever. It's not. I think one of the interesting things that you have researched is that you could do an intensive something in your garage or in your basement for 10 minutes and completely have a mind shift and feel 100 times better than you did 10 minutes before.
I call it the catecholamine wash. It's like one of the most powerful ways we have of cleaning the emotional computer is getting physical, getting our heart rates up. We can do that by jogging in place. We can do it by, I've been here in the winter and I spent 39 years in Florida, and the snow here is piled up and it's freezing cold. And I have a walk that I do. It's about 4.5 miles and it's pretty much all uphill. And there's only been 4 days that I haven't done it. The only days I didn't do it when it was so slippery and so icy that it was quite dangerous to do it. But I've done it every day. And I believe it is one of the things that's kept me sane through all of these difficult times. And my kids watch it. And today I went on the walk with my 2 sons, and they are, I'm trying to set an example. I'm going to be 78 soon, and I believe that they're still watching me. My grandkids are watching me. One of my grandkids had a skiing accident, and they look at this in a certain way, and I have a very different way of looking at it, because these are just simply bumps in the road that you can grow from. And let's find ways of actually becoming stronger as a result. What can you do that you can't now work out? What can you do that actually might help you in the future? What might be some things you can do? And how might this help you become a better person as you grow older? And that just changing that entire framing of that event. And my hope is that no matter where I am or what I'm doing, I'm actually serving as an example of what I've learned. I've been very, very lucky to learn a lot through the lives of countless people throughout my lifetime. And those lessons, unless I show it in my own life, don't mean anything. And so, all of us are teaching every single moment we're with our children. And I've been a coach, and I always thought being a coach was one of the greatest opportunities I had in people's lives. But I think the greatest opportunity for influence is not being a coach in sport, but being a parent who is coaching the inner voice of their students, of their children, every single moment that they can. It's hard work, but it will pay huge dividends for them and for you.
Getting to know you over the years, I was so impressed when I saw, first of all, I think you're a master coach, and the people that you've worked with over the years would absolutely call you that. I was so impressed when at your retirement party, you probably had about 200 people there in Florida, at the J&J Center. And there was the president of the company and various senior executives, and I had the honor to say a few words about you as well. But when it was time for you to talk, you had not a piece of paper with you. You went around to every single person in that audience, and you said something completely different about every single person. And I was writing it down because I was trying to see how many lines would you use of the same thing about that person, about you've helped me through so many things, or you've done this. It was so authentic. It was so sincere. And the fact that you did this for 200 people, like, I could tell you really worked hard to really get to know the people that you worked with, your team, to get to know the people that you were shoulder to shoulder with. And not only did they appreciate you, but you appreciated them. And you truly were your best self all the time. And I guess the question is, how'd you do it?
I really believe at the core that this remarkable company that we built, and ultimately it was taken over by Johnson and Johnson, had very little to do with me. I could never have built that company without extraordinary energy and effort from so many people. And I realized that we did something really special. I don't think it'll ever be done again. And the lives we impacted, people are almost every day I get another note from someone saying that that was a life-changing experience. And it wasn't me. It was that we really, every single person there was special and special to me. And I felt like they're giving life out of their body to a mission to help other people. And the least I can do is understand the sacrifices, the devotion they have. And if I really want to have a great company, I have to really appreciate the contributions they are making. It looks like maybe the senior execs, maybe because I was the co-founder, and I don't believe that for an instant. I really believe that it was their energy that created this extraordinary outcome. And so for me, it's very easy for me to understand each one of their contributions and what made them special, because I valued them. And it wasn't, as you said, it wasn't something to make money about. I just said, we wouldn't be here today. We couldn't help other people if it weren't for your extraordinary investment, selfless investment. You're getting paid here, but we're all getting paid, but that's not why we do this. We do this, we want to make a contribution in a way that's much bigger than ourselves. And so, I really, it's a belief inside of me that it's almost never about what I do unless it enables other people to pick up and move forward and to overcome the obstacles. We faced obstacles you cannot imagine in building that company. But it was the people, their resiliency and their fighting spirit that enabled us to contribute to the lives of so many. And I appreciated that. When I stepped down, I still feel like I wish I'm still connected to all those people. And I wish I could say and thank them every day for what they did, and it was them that made the difference. I was just there trying to help orchestrate the energies to really reach people that maybe had never been reached before and were cynical. And we changed lives that, everyone said you couldn't, but we did it. And we made world champions, but that wasn't the whole idea. It was really making human beings better. And out of that health, better human beings make better performance.
I saw you as kind of the maestro who would bring out the best in people. And as a parent, gosh, what better thing could you try to do as a parent? And so, Dr. Loehr, I want to just thank you on behalf of everybody on this Zoom call for your time, for your contributions tonight, but also in what you've done for the sports world, as well as the military world and the business world. I mean, you've done some incredible things. You definitely, parents, we will be, this is a great book, and we'll be actually sending a few of you some autograph copies that have sent some great questions in. And I want to thank you so much for your time, Jim, and for your contributions.
Michael, I just want to say this, that, I've met a lot of people in my life, a lot of extraordinary people, and had the opportunity to see them in their most difficult times. And I would have to say you're the most extraordinary example of what we were teaching at the Institute. The kinds of challenges that you've been facing, and even your ability to be on this call tonight with all that you have been facing on so many levels. You are an unbelievable inspiration to me. And that my life now is devoted to helping kids. And when I see what you have done with young people and youth, and how this pandemic has kind of brought this whole thing to a halt, and how you've been able to kind of resurrect your hope and your belief in that it is possible to reach out to these kids and help them again, and to do it in new and creative ways. I can only say I have the deepest respect for what you've done and who you are as a human being, as a father, as a husband, and as an inspiration to me and countless others. So I don't know how you got your strength. I know you're a man of great faith, which I think is terrific. But you're a living example of what we were trying to teach in so many ways. And thank you for all you've done for so many people.
Thank you, Dr. Loehr. And I've got a wonderful team behind me, and we've got a wonderful family base of loyal ESF families. So we couldn't be more grateful. So again, thank you all for tuning in tonight. We hope to do this again another time, but we hope it was worthwhile for you all. And thank you, and God bless.
God bless everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.